Alright, are we streaming? Looks like it's an excellent connection, it says. Boom! We're streaming! How about that? Awesome! Just in time for the train to go off behind me, too. I'm gonna see if I can give myself a little bit more volume here. Awesome! Alright, so this is an incredibly impromptu stream on the Team Ravelry YouTube channel. Welcome everyone to the Team Ravelry Tuesday show. Might not always be Tuesday. I have no idea. It just kind of depends on my schedule right now and if we can get something solidified soon, because I also have a day job. Going to be talking about some week 2 recap. Going to talk about, is Ohio State in some trouble here? Defense not looking too good. Michigan defense, on the other hand, looking pretty good. Also, is it possible that Iowa could potentially go to the college football playoff? They're certainly playing like they want to. That's for sure. So we'll talk about a couple of these things. We'll look at some of the score predictions for week 3 coming up here in a little bit. Right now I want to start things off just talking about what we saw in week 2, what we saw from Ohio State and Oregon to start things off. Man, what is that? What is that noise? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Well, I never said it was a professional stream, did I? I just said this was a stream. It was happening. So, yeah, Ohio State and Oregon. Man, what a game. I was actually a little bit surprised by this game. It really looked like Oregon was in control of pretty much the entire thing, especially early on. I thought for sure, though, coming out of halftime, though, that Ohio State would really start to pick it up and come after them. But that was just never the case. I'm pulling up some stats right now. Here we go. All right, 35-28, Oregon over Ohio State. Oregon ranked number 12, Ohio State number 3, obviously. C.J. Verdell was kind of the story of the game with 20 carries for 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. OSU running back Williams, only 14 carries, but only 77 yards. I think that's a big storyline for that particular game. I think Oregon's defense was actually a lot more prepared for Ohio State than I think a lot of people thought they were going to be. Kind of the question coming into the game, would Oregon's DBs be able to keep up with Ohio State's wide receivers? And you know what? Actually, as far as defensive back play goes, I thought, Oregon did a pretty good job. But Ohio State still had, they had some really good passing going on. Let's see. C.J. Stroud, 35 for 54 for 484 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. If you just looked at that particular stat line, you would say, well, gee whiz, Ohio State crushed Oregon. And that's just obviously not the case. I can't remember the Oregon's quarterback's name. Anthony Brown, that's it. Anthony Brown, 17 for 35, 236 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also an incredibly good game. That's a very, very good game. Kind of amazing when you think about it, though, because, C.J. Stroud throwing for almost 500 yards in a single game, that's an incredible stat. Incredible stat with 3 touchdowns. As far as he's concerned, I don't think that he's going to be an issue moving forward. Obviously, Oregon's probably the favorite at this point to win the Pac-12, and C.J. Stroud playing that well against them, that's a really good sign for Ohio State as far as offense goes. It's the defense that you got to wonder about. I know Ryan Day did a press conference earlier today saying that things were going to change as far as the defense goes. They're going to have some good heart-to-hearts, have a really good talk among the coaching staff and all that, try and figure out some stuff and see what's going on. As far as I'm concerned, though, it's a pretty I don't know what I'm going to say. It's a pretty balanced failure from front to back. Front 7. Linemen not getting it done in the trenches for Ohio State. Offensively, yeah, for sure. Offensive linemen are doing pretty good. Defensively, though, I think it really comes down to Ohio State's had some really good defensive ends, defensive tackles, some really good linebacker play and stuff like that. Some names that you got to know over the course of a season, and you could count on them to be really consistent players and all that. Not this year. Not this year, and I think that that's the case mostly because I can't actually remember the name of anyone who plays on defense for them except for Proctor, who I know fractured his leg, unfortunately for him. All the best. Hopefully he heals from that quickly. I mean, fracture is a fracture. You're not going to heal from that quickly, but hopefully it's a relatively painless process for him. But anyway, point is that Ohio State's they don't really have any of those standout players on defense like they normally do, especially defensive ends. They don't have anybody that's really stepping up, putting pressure on quarterbacks and stuff like that. Anthony Brown, I feel like, I can't remember how many sacks were in this game. I don't think Oregon allowed very many, just a couple if I remember correctly, maybe even if that. But, I mean, not enough, obviously. I mean, the defensive tackle play, or the defensive line play in general, just it wasn't enough. CJ Verdell, right? CJ Verdell was able to carry for 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. I believe it was also for 8 yards per carry, if I remember correctly, which is obscene. That's unacceptable. Front to back, defensive wise, you should not be allowing running backs to put up 8 yards per carry against you. That's you're not going to win a game doing that. I mean, you know, if you're Ohio State right now, you know, put yourself in the shoes of an Ohio State fan, and you just watch CJ Verdell from Oregon put up 8 yards per carry on you, and Oregon wasn't even supposed to beat you. You're an Ohio State fan, and you're looking at those 8 yards per carry, and then you're looking at Michigan right now. Michigan put up something similar against Washington. That's all Michigan does is run the ball at this point, and they do it extraordinarily well right now. Right now, it's early. I get it. But, I mean, and that's not to say, I'm not making any claims about what's going to happen at the end of the season. I'm not making any claims about Week 12. I'm just saying that if you're an Ohio State fan, you're really upset about that, especially because of what's happening with that team up north. Because you know that, I mean, first off, stopping the run has got to be the biggest thing for a defense to be able to do. If you can't stop the run, then you're opening yourself up to being vulnerable, especially with play action pass. I mean, then they'll just toss the ball right over you, and there's nothing that you can do. If you can't stop the run, you can't stop anything. And right now, Ohio State just absolutely cannot stop the run. And that's pretty much the story for that game. Not a whole lot else, I mean, that I can really point to and say this is why Ohio State lost the game. I mean, you know, a lot of people were saying would CJ Stroud, ooh, there you go, CJ Verdell, CJ Stroud, would CJ Stroud be young? Would his youth show? And it just didn't. It didn't. He looked just as much a veteran quarterback as any Ohio State quarterback has over the last few years for the Buckeyes. So that's I don't know. Personally, I don't think that anyone should be worried about him. The only thing that I could possibly think of with CJ Stroud is that he does have a tendency to miss some, maybe not even a tendency, but it's happened that he's missed some wide open throws. And that's definitely a youth thing that he'll settle down a little bit and he'll gain control over his arm a little bit better as he grows up. But he's also growing up in front of your eyes in real time over the course of a 4-quarter football game. That's exactly what happened during the Oregon game. I mean, that's what the announcers were saying, that we're literally watching this freshman grow up before our eyes. And they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. I mean, in the face of adversity, he was doing some really good things, just not enough. And Oregon was able to do more things offensively to stay out of reach. And Ohio State Ohio State scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. They had 2 touchdowns in the entire game prior to that. So that tells me that the offense, especially CJ Stroud, was able to lead them and get them on a track towards potentially coming back and winning this game. But then Oregon goes ahead and puts together a fifth touchdown, 5th touchdown early in the fourth quarter themselves, and that's just enough. They were far enough ahead that, you know, even if CJ Stroud was able to properly lead his team during the fourth quarter to potentially come back, it's too late. Too little, too late. All right, so moving on from that, we're going to take a quick look at Michigan. So the reason I want to touch on Michigan, first off, big Michigan fan. I've got my flag over here. That's, you know, we're a little bit biased here. But also because Michigan was supposed to be 1-1 at this point. They were. Now, I get it. You know, Washington loses to Montana, first game of the season. It's a shocker. No one understands what happened. Washington's clearly not as good as we thought they were supposed to be. But I don't think that that's true. I don't. I think that it is possible, just possible, that Washington's actually a lot better than what their record says and what their losses say. But I think that they've had a rough couple of weeks to start the season for sure. So just to look, at some quick stats for the Michigan game. So obviously, first off, it was 31-10. That's domination. That's absolutely a Michigan victory. That is Michigan domination from front to back. Blake Corum, that 67-yard touchdown run that he had to open up the touchdown scoring. I mean, that was an incredible run. Excuse me. Ugh. Allergies have been terrible all day. 67-yard run to open up the touchdown scoring. I mean, that was a phenomenal run. That was just a win in the trenches right there. Nothing else to say about it. Just a very, very well executed play. Cade McNamara, 7 for 15 for 44 yards. Not really asking a lot of Cade McNamara right now. And you know what? I don't have an issue with that. So some people are saying, like, maybe we should be concerned because Harbaugh refuses to throw the ball. Well, I'm sorry. Harbaugh just put up 31 points on a Pac-12 defense, a team that they were supposed to lose to. Forget the Montana game. I don't want to worry about that right now. But Michigan was supposed to lose to Washington. Michigan was supposed to be entering the season. I mean, there was no hype. There was absolutely no hype surrounding Michigan entering this season. And then all of a sudden they put up 47 points against Western Michigan. And you've got a couple of people saying, like, man, Western Michigan's pretty good. This is a big deal. I was one of those people. I follow Western Michigan football. That's my alma mater. They're not a bad football team. For the past 5 or 6 years or so, especially ever since 2016, they've been in the conversation for the MAC title. Now, I get it. It's the MAC conference. You cannot overlook the MAC. Eastern Michigan, coming up to their game against Wisconsin, was on a 3-game win streak against the Big Ten. And I don't care who those teams are. You just can't overlook the MAC. You really can't. Central has beaten Michigan State before. Western has some high-profile Big Ten wins as well, beating Northwestern, also beating Purdue at one point. They were competitive against Michigan State during one of Michigan State's better years. Not good years, but better years. So you just absolutely cannot overlook the MAC. That whole, it's Western Michigan argument is just not going to fly here. They had the third best quarterback in the nation last year in terms of pass efficiency or offensive efficiency. Can't really remember that one. Just a phenomenal quarterback in Caleb Ellaby. He's a really, really good quarterback. So none of that, it's just a mid-level MAC team nonsense here. I'm not going to accept that. Western Michigan's a good football team. And Michigan hangs 47 points on them. Now that's a big deal too because there was a lot of passing in that game because it was working. Actually early on, running the ball for Michigan against Western was actually kind of difficult. Western was winning the battle in the trenches at least a little bit. I mean, Michigan's obviously still a bit bigger, a little bit faster, so they're going to be able to get a couple of yards. But allowing Michigan to run the ball 2-3 yards on a run, that's a win for Western Michigan, absolutely. I understand against other teams that would probably be like, okay, that's a fine stat, but where are the sacks? Where are the tackles for loss? Against Western Michigan, that's a big deal. And I say that after having just went on about how Western Michigan's a good team. So I understand that might be a little contradictory, but I don't care. We're going to go with it. I didn't say they were the best team. I'm just saying they're a good team. But anyway, point being is that Michigan absolutely had a great passing, or had to go to the passing game in that game, and did it phenomenally well. Cade McNamara was amazing. J.J. McCarthy, oh man, I can't believe I got to be at the stadium for his first touchdown pass as a Wolverine. That was an incredible play. Absolutely incredible play. So then all of a sudden, Michigan's hanging 47 points on an opponent in general. One of the highest scoring games I can remember under Harbaugh. Obviously the 70 some odd point drubbing against Rutgers was nonsense. But definitely a high scoring game, uncharacteristically high scoring game for Michigan. So big deal, very, very big deal. Offensive efficiency was going to be a question mark for Michigan this season, and it's not, at least through 2 games. And I understand that there's still, like, I get Western Michigan, Washington, that's fine. I don't care. I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers are saying you don't need a passing game when your running game is scoring just fine. Blake Corum, 21 carries, 171 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's a good game. That's a very, very good game. And if I'm not mistaken, Hassan Haskins was number 2 in terms of carries and had himself 155 yards with a touchdown. So the running game accounts for, what is this? 326 yards of total offense and 4 touchdowns. That's game. That's a good game. I don't particularly care what the stats in the passing game are if Michigan's putting up 4 touchdowns. If Michigan's putting up 28 points a game through the run game. Now, obviously, 28 points a game is not going to cut it against some of the better teams that they're going to face. I'm thinking particularly Wisconsin's defense is probably not going to allow that to happen. So that's where I'd like to see some of the pass game come out. But again, Washington was supposed to be their first loss of the season. And not only were they not their first loss of the season, they destroyed them. Michigan destroyed Washington through the run game. If you can establish that run game and you're winning by a lot, then there's not really a need to go to the passing game. I would much rather Michigan establish that run game and defeat their opponents resoundingly through the running game. Is that the right word? Resoundingly? I would rather Michigan defeated their opponents soundly via the run game than have to resort to the passing game to try and make up some of those yards, because the run game pays dividends down the course of the game. If the opponent cannot stop the run game, then they can't stop anything else. This is what I said when I just talked about Ohio State. And frankly, Michigan's running backs also deliver some serious punishment, as does their offensive line at this point, where the run game, the more you run, the more success you have with running the ball, the more you're wearing down that defense to where the defense is just not going to be able to do anything later and later into the game. And then all of a sudden you're putting up 3-4 touchdowns in the run game. It's all about wearing down your opponent. That's what it comes down to. And then obviously, I mean, Michigan had 2 touchdowns in the first half, 2 touchdowns in the second half. So a pretty balanced effort. I think the offense did by no means started fast, but just wearing down their opponent as going on, as the game went on. Yeah, that's what that comes down to. Also, good defense, very, very good defense. Washington's offense really had no answer throughout the entire course of the game. Now, last thing before we get to the predictions for Week 3. Michigan versus Iowa into the CFP. Got to look up some Iowa stats. Iowa's looking good. I don't think they were supposed to beat Indiana, or at least if they were, then it was going to be a close game. But wow, that was not a close game. And then going into Iowa State and beating them by double digits. That's a big deal. 27-17 the final, Iowa over Iowa State. Rushing, we've got Iowa 21 or Goodson for 21 carries, 55 yards and a touchdown. Iowa State had running back Hall, 16 carries, 69 yards and a touchdown. Not a whole lot to speak of in terms of running. Iowa quarterback Petrus, I think his name is Spencer Petrus, my bad. Spencer Petrus, 11 for 21, 106 yards, 1 touchdown. And then Brock Purdy for Iowa State, 13 for 27, 138 yards, 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. That's the name of the game. Iowa's defense is getting those turnovers, and that's a big deal. That's a very, very big deal. Now, looking forward for Iowa, so they put up 34 against Indiana. Indiana doesn't really have a good defense right now. That's fine. But they put up another almost 30 points against Iowa State, a top 10 team. That's a big deal. Now, either Iowa State's going to go through the rest of the season and they're going to suck, or Iowa State's going to remain fairly competitive, which, in recent years they have. Which means this is actually a pretty big deal for Iowa. Iowa looks good this year, guys. Iowa has something rather special, I think, going on this year. Now, it's the classic Kirk Ferentz offense and defense, okay? There's nothing too flashy about this. Petrus with 160 yards and a touchdown. 1 touchdown. Goodson with 55 yards and 1 touchdown. So a very balanced offense between running and passing. You're not going to see more or less on any one particular side. So let's see, Iowa rushing. As a team, they only had 67 rushing yards. As a team, they had 106 passing yards. So, yeah, I mean, 172, 173 total offensive yards. And they won the game. It comes down. Iowa State's offense actually has, 252 yards through the air and 87 yards rushing. So what is that? We were looking at 339 yards total offense, I think. Almost 340 yards total offense to Iowa's 172 or 73, I think I said. So that's an amazing advantage for Iowa State. It's those turnovers. Iowa State was moving the ball, turned the ball over in the red zone a couple of times, I think it was, or at least close to it. They would move down the field a little bit and then just turn the ball over. Now, that's not necessarily a sustainable model for Iowa. Iowa's going to have to figure out a way to win the battle in the trenches a little bit more and stop opposing teams before they can move. But definitely a bend, don't break mentality for Kirk Ferentz's defense there, which is classic Kirk Ferentz. Try and wear down opponents, play good defense, make sure that your offense can do just enough, spreading the ball around, not doing anything too flashy. That's Kirk Ferentz. And that was a good Kirk Ferentz win, frankly. That was a good Iowa win. All right. Now, I'm going to read off my best bets for... not best bets. I'm just going to read off my picks for the next... or for week 3, if I can figure out how to add a window capture here. Okay, window... Desktop? No, not desktop. Unless that gets me... No, not desktop. Oops. That's the OBS logo. That's not gonna... No. Goodness gracious. Oh my gosh. What's happening here? Menu bar. Yeah, this isn't working. Oh, but it's still there. Shoot. Yes, remove window capture. Let's try display capture. I don't know why if I do window capture, it won't just show up with Microsoft here. I have to give system preferences. Give me a break. MacBooks. They're pretty cool to a point. Give privacy. Okay. All right. Well, that kind of sucks. So unfortunately, I can't actually show what I want to show. All right. Well, that's okay. I'll just go ahead and read off my score predictions, and then we'll look at the game of the game of the week, which is, well, I'll get to that, won't I? All right. So first off, we have Maryland at Illinois. Maryland offense looking really good. Illinois had a good game against Nebraska, but obviously Nebraska's been struggling, so that win's not looking as good for the Illini. Tough start to the Brett by Lima era. I got to get through this pretty quickly. Tough start to the Brett by Lima era, but you know that'll happen with new coaches. So I'm taking Maryland 40-21. Nebraska at Oklahoma. Sorry, Nebraska, you're not doing well, and you're not stopping that offense. That's for sure. Give me Oklahoma 56-10. Cincinnati at Indiana. Indiana, decent offense. I expect them to score a few points. They could have been something special if they had anything resembling defense this year. I don't understand what was going on. They had a lot of hype coming into the season. They looked okay for the most part in that second game, I believe it was. I might be mistaken, but I mean, against Iowa, 34-6, just unacceptable. So I'm definitely going to take the Cincinnati Bearcats. I believe they are Bearcats. Cincinnati 31-17. Michigan State at Miami. Michigan State's had a good couple of games. There's no denying it. They've had some good offense, some relatively decent defense. I see here. Indiana. So going back to Indiana, they beat Idaho 56-14. It's Idaho. Sorry, not happening. I mean, it is happening. It did happen. But I'm just saying it's not enough. So, Cincinnati will win that game. Michigan State, like I said, good couple of games. 38-21 against Northwestern. That's a good win. 42-14 against Youngstown State. Also a good win. Probably both wins that they should have had. That's a pretty normal thing. They did what they were supposed to do. These are the types of games that, if they win, it's like, yeah, I mean, they should have won. But if they lost, it would have been disastrous. So, second year under Mel Tucker, things looking good so far. Their real test comes against number 24 Miami. Unfortunately, I think Miami's going to be a little bit ticked off given their recent couple of results. And I also think that they actually have too strong a defense for Michigan State to do anything special against. I think Northwestern and Youngstown State were both pretty weak on defense, and that's why they were able to do something. So I'm going to definitely take Miami Hurricanes 28-14. Northern Illinois against Michigan. Michigan's running the ball, and Northern Illinois cannot stop it. Northern Illinois just simply cannot stop the run whatsoever. I'm going a little bit bold with this pick, though. I'm calling Michigan 45-0. Calling the shutout. Minnesota at Colorado. Minnesota, they had a good couple of quarters against Ohio State. Colorado actually almost beat, number 5 Texas A&M last week. Really, really close game. So I definitely think Colorado is going to be the better team. That said, I think Minnesota's offense is going to do something relatively decent, but it's not going to be enough. I'm going to take Colorado 35-28. Purdue against Notre Dame. Now, this pick's going to surprise everybody, and that pretty much just gives away what I'm talking about. So, unfortunately, Purdue's running back, Horvath, broke his leg. He's going to be out 4 to 8 weeks. I don't understand how anyone's not out for the season just by default with a broken leg, but, best of luck to the guy. That sucks. Purdue, a couple of good wins, 30-21 over Oregon State, and then 49-0 against UConn. UConn's obviously a dumpster fire, but a shutout's a shutout. That's a good thing, especially for Purdue. Notre Dame, on the other hand, not looking so hot these days. Almost lost to Toledo, 32-29, and then almost lost to Florida State, who just lost to an FCS team. By the looks of it, Notre Dame does not deserve their number 12 ranking. And Purdue's going to know that. So I think Purdue is going to be looking for some blood, looking to see if they can do something on national TV against a top 15 opponent in Notre Dame. Notre Dame being a traditional power for the most part. And I am going to play into that. So I want the Boilermakers. Give me the Boilermakers to win 35-31 on the road against the Irish. Kent State at Iowa. Meh. Iowa 45-6. Tulsa at Ohio State. Ohio State has an opportunity to fix some stuff on defense. Tulsa's not at all a strong team, so maybe they'll be able to practice some good defensive looks and see if they can fix anything, see if they can put something together and maybe put together a strategy for the rest of the season. Offensively, I think Ohio State will do what they normally do. I think in garbage time they'll probably put in the subs and they'll slow the scoring down a little bit. So I'm going to take the Buckeyes 41-14. Delaware at Rutgers. Rutgers kind of surprising this year a little bit so far, with a couple of good showings against Temple and then last week against Syracuse. I thought they were going to put up a few more points against Syracuse, but defense really did the job in that game. That's pretty good. 61-14 against Temple, though. Whew. Crazy that this is the Rutgers Scarlet Knights we're talking about. Delaware, I believe they're FCS. They might even be Division III. I don't know. That might be a ridiculous thing that I just said. But in any case, I'm going to take the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 50-10. Northwestern at Duke. Duke has played a couple of games that against teams that I forgot existed, and has only won one of them. Not a strong team. Northwestern, though, also not at all a strong team. That said, 24 points against Indiana State, whatever. 21 points against Michigan State. That honestly looks way more impressive to me. But defense just didn't get it done in that game. And Duke, I don't know. They're a mixed bag to me, but this game is kind of a mixed bag overall. So I'm just giving Duke the home field advantage, 28-21 over Northwestern. And then our game of the week, which I really wish I could show you, and I'm going to have to get that fixed. That's fine. I'll figure it out for next week. Auburn at Penn State. So we have Auburn at Penn State. That is the game of the week, which is what I just said. Auburn, coached by Kevin Steele. These stats come to you thanks to TeamRavelry.com. TeamRivalry.com is where you can get all of your Big Ten stats. We have historical data going all the way back into the late 1800s for every Big Ten team, every single game that they have ever played, every coach, every stadium, every high school team that they randomly played over the years. It's all there. It's all dope. This game played at University Park, Pennsylvania, Beaver Stadium, capacity of 106,572. Auburn and Penn State have played a grand total of 2 times, and it is a 1-1 tie. Auburn has, nope, sorry, I misread that. This is the 3rd meeting between Auburn and Penn State then. Penn State, a little interesting stat so far. They are 60-23 in terms of outscoring their opponents, offensive points to defensive points allowed. Kevin Steele's record against Penn State is 0-1. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. We have to fill in SEC data here. So Kevin Steele's record, he's never played against Penn State. So that's interesting. Is that the coach, Kevin Steele? I've never heard of him. I'll have to look him up real quick. Make sure that's the right guy. Ooh, Kevin Steele obituary. That's not good. Coached the Lion previously. He is currently... Yeah, okay. So he's currently at Auburn. All right, good. I was worried that was incorrect. Anyway. Latest winning streak, Auburn versus Penn State. 1 game. It looks like they played back in January 1st, 2003. And again, it's 1-1. So they're Penn State, it looks like... Nope, I'm sorry. Auburn is on the 1-game win streak. Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting game. Auburn has 2 60-point victories. They put up 2 60-point games back-to-back. Obviously, both against really weak opponents. Penn State's offense or defense is going to be a lot better than anything Auburn's faced so far. It's week 3. That makes sense. Penn State looked pretty good in their season opener against Wisconsin, 16-10. A couple of mistakes. Sean Clifford looked a little shaky in some spots. I think Auburn's actually going to be a bit of a different test for Penn State than Wisconsin was. Different as in I think Auburn might actually be a bit faster. Or at least a little bit more of an intense team than they've played so far, which unfortunately for Penn State fans means that I have to give the victory to Auburn. I think Auburn's offense is just really fast right now, and I understand they haven't played a defense like Penn State yet, but it's really good. It's really, really good. I'm gonna take the Auburn Tigers to beat Penn State 35-31. And that will do it for the first Tuesday stream. It is week 3. College football's back. It's amazing. So excited. And we will be back next week with more picks.